G'day guys, you're back with MiracleMAX. Today in the workshop we have a Toyota Yaris 2009 model with a 1.3 litre engine in it. Apparently it's coughing and farting up the road. It's had other people look at it and they haven't been able to sort it out. So let's see if we can figure it out together. As usual, I've had the customer fill in a customer diagnostic checklist. Now this is when a vehicle may have a bit of a tricksy problem and we need to sort it out correctly. We need as much information as we can get. I've also just had a chat with the customer then as she dropped off the car just to get some more information. She said that it's getting worse, and in recent times it used to be only as you accelerate up the road, but now it's as low as 50 kilometres an hour when she goes to accelerate. And as you can see, it's had a fuel filter replaced, and 4 weeks later a fuel pump was replaced as well, and it's been progressively getting worse and worse, particularly when you accelerate over here, and normal operating temperature, those sort of things. It's been to other places as well. Now a few other things I did notice. It says over here that the check engine light comes and goes. Now at the moment it's on. I'll show you inside the vehicle now just to see some other things that I've noticed up front. So I've got the vehicle up and running, as you can see, only 151,000 Ks, but notice how low the fuel level is. That I can't do proper testing with a really low fuel level. I might have to dump some fuel in it. And of course over to the right here we have our money light stuck on the dash. But they're all pieces of information that we need to take on board. So we need to do perhaps a road test, and also we need to do a driver's seat diagnosis. Wouldn't you know it, I've taken it for a road test, a good thorough road test. Stupid thing won't play up. But one thing that's on my side is that dollar sign is still stuck on the dash. I haven't added fuel to it simply because of the fact that it may alter some of the parameters that we're working with at the moment. One problem with not having well over quarter a tank of fuel is that some of the monitors won't run, and therefore we can't complete a full drive cycle. Anyway, we'll stick on the scan tool and check it out and see what we can find. So it's completed its scan. Let's check out what we have in front of us. Engine. Let's see what's behind door number 1. Ooh, okay, we have quite a few things there. Catalyst efficiency, catalyst threshold, system too rich. Catalyst system efficiency, that's interesting, isn't it? Let's see the freeze frame data on those. Wow, look, it's pulling back 20% in fuel, so it was definitely rich. It was only at idle. That's a bit weird. It had 31% load and yet it was only at idle, or 16 Ks an hour, so she must have been backing off at that particular point, I guess. 2.3 grams per second. We'll check that under live data shortly. Oxygen sensor pegged right out, 1.2. Let's start it up and go to some live data. Right, so the cooling fan is on. It's just heated up a bit. Just been going through live data. Probably the only thing that I can't really agree with is my catalyst temperature. Now I know I'm at idle at the moment, but even at revs they don't seem to change a hell of a lot. It does a bit, but not a hell of a lot. It should be about 2000 RPM. We should see a massive difference between those two. Now although it is getting a little bit of difference there, not as much as I would have hoped. So yeah, it could be a block catalytic converter. As a result of overfueling, that would account for our high fuel level, and that can destroy our catalytic converter. And that, of course, that would create lack of power if it's internally collapsed. But as you can see, the temperature between the front and the back isn't much different at all, is it? We might do some basic checks first, just to cover our bases. While it's true here in Australia we've had massive bushfires, and this car has done about 8,000 K since its last service, but surely we should be able to make sure that our filters are clean. Check out the difference in the colour. So it's good that the filter is doing its job, but hey, look, that's pretty rank, hey? Look at this. Look at the dust coming off of that. How on earth can the poor vehicle breathe? Look at that, you've got a whole insect colony in there. So I doubt this was replaced last service. I'm going to put a new one in for the customer. To me it seemed a little bit gutless on the road test, but it is only a 1.3, but it needs all the help it can get. So something along these lines is not real healthy, is it? Not sure how much you guys can see, but we've got our front oxygen sensor and our rear oxygen sensor. This here should be rock solid all the time. But when I first started it up, this was all over the place. It was just ridiculous. Look at this. That's just rubbish right there. There's our evidence that we have trouble with our catalytic converter. This should be rock solid on our second oxygen sensor. This bloke should be going up and down. It's a bit, yeah, how you going? But this fella should be rock solid, and it ain't. So a catalytic converter is collapsed inside, and it's not doing the job that it's meant to do. Look at that, it's just dropping down and down. It's all over the shop. Catalytic converter, guys, I'm sure of it. We'll have to pull it off, have a look inside and see what it looks like. I've managed to pull the exhaust system off. It's all one piece, which is a bit of a pain in the backside, but managed to do it. So obviously you need to check your catalytic converter. In this particular model, that's that bloke right there. So let's have a look at the front of it. Is it had it like I thought it'd be? Or am I wrong? Has the data lied? Okay, it should be knackered. Hang on a sec. What's going on? It looks actually quite reasonable in there. There's nothing... Have I made a mistake? Hang on a sec. Hang on, Max. Let's think about it. The data doesn't lie. Okay, we're checking the wrong end of the catalytic converter. It's the back end that should be melted. Let's check that out. I've pulled out my oxygen sensor, as you can see, sitting there. I'm now going to have a look at the back end of the catalytic converter, because that's the fella that usually melts. So I've got my inspection camera hooked up here, and I'll show you what I've found. Just turn him around like that, point him back up this way, and don't know if you can see it or not. I might put some more light on there. Oh, there you go, look at that, eh? Isn't that pretty? In actual fact, you can see a pinhole of daylight coming through from the front end as well. So this thing's absolutely fishnookered. She's not healthy at all. The back end is totally melted. So obviously it's going to provide lack of power. When it blocks it totally, it's going to starvation and all sorts of problems. So yes, the customer needs a whole new exhaust system. I wonder if the new exhaust system would come with the factory fit wasp nest. Interesting. What a saga this has turned out to be. I ordered an exhaust system from a local exhaust company. They were going to get it shipped overnight from Sydney, and the freight company took it from Sydney and kept on driving all the way to Melbourne. What? So they rang up and they said, "Where's the exhaust system?" And they said, "Oh, did you still want it?" So they sent it onto Adelaide. Then from Adelaide it came all the way back here again. Overall it was 2,800 kilometres and took 2 weeks to get here, only to find out what? It was the wrong exhaust system. It should have taken overnight to travel the 200 kilometres to get here, but no, they just had to take it to all the tourist destinations. So the exhaust company got a couple of catalytic converters, got it up the next day, welded them in place, and now I'm just about to put the oxygen sensor back in and get everything set up, and hopefully we've got everything sorted. So did I diagnose correctly? Certainly did. Check it out. Have a look at the inside of the catalytic converter there. It's just absolutely knackered. Fishnookered for sure. They've gone ahead and replaced both catalytic converters that were in line because all the stuff from this damaged one went into this one as well. It was the best method to carry out a full complete repair. I now need to look at my oxygen sensor readings and make sure that the O2 sensors themselves are okay and that there's no reason for this catalytic converter failure. The oxygen sensor in this case is on the passenger side. If we pull back the carpet going into the centre console, you can see where it comes up through the floor there. And that just reconnects up in behind here. There should be a connector here somewhere that it connects onto, and then it clips into a little hole or bracket up here. I'm probably in the road, but that's where it connects to anyway. Those two fellas made up, and then I can hook up the scan tool. So looking at the scan tool right now, we can see that we have 4 fault codes listed here in the engine side of things. We'll just see what they are. System too rich, catalyst efficiency below, they were there before. Nothing really is standing out there. I'm going to clear these codes in a while, but I'll just record this so I can look at it later on. So I'm going to erase those now that I've got all the details and see what we've got in live data. I want to see what I'm getting with my oxygen sensors, what they're reading. While I'm happy with these readings overall, sort of, I can see my front oxygen sensor, my sensor 1, is doing its job. It's going up and down. 0.2 to 1 is a little bit excessive, so yes, it might be running a bit rich there, but this fella down here is not doing its job. It's meant to be about 450 millivolts and it's not doing that at all. I've checked my heater circuit, power and ground, that's all okay, but yeah, I'm not getting what I'm meant to in here. So the catalytic converter may have actually damaged the oxygen sensor as well, or perhaps this oxygen sensor created the problem with the catalytic converter. So I'm going to suggest to the customer, it's going to be a tough call, but it may need another oxygen sensor on the rear as well. I have noticed as the engine has warmed up more and more, we're getting closer to our 1.3 grams per second. It's a 1.3 litre engine, and so at idle it should be roughly about 1.3. So I'm happy with that. So it's one less thing to tick off the box. Just about to go for a road test and do a volumetric efficiency test and make sure that the vehicle is doing what it's meant to do. One of the advantages of being a TAP member, the automotive technician, is that you get fantastic diagnostic programs like this one here, a MAF sensor and VE calculator. Now what that indicates is the volumetric efficiency, or how much air we're able to ram into the engine. Bang for buck, basically. I've inputted the data. It's a 1.3 litre engine. It's 46 degree Celsius going into the air intake temperature sensor. Airflow is 43.17 grams. The barometric pressure here is 101 kilopascals. The engine speed that I was doing when I did the test, that's RPM of course, is 1130. So let's see what happens when we calculate. 86.53%. As you can see, it's color coded for your convenience. Green is good, so we know that it is being efficient. The air going in and the air coming out is giving us the bang for buck that we need. The good thing about this, it gives us some instructions as to how to do it and why we actually need information about our volumetric efficiency. It can point to diagnostic flaws and where to check. I'll put a link down below for you if you're interested in joining. I'm just checking for current on the oxygen sensor. As you can see, it's on the passenger side. And I've just got a current clamp around one of the heater wires. There's two things that this is telling me. Firstly is that there is no break in the wire. How do I know that? Well, if it's got an open circuit, it won't have current, will it? And you can see there, it's got about 1.3 amps running at the moment. And considering I've had this running for a little while, that's not unusual. It did go up to about 7 amps, if I remember rightly, and so that's okay. But look, this oxygen sensor isn't doing what I expect it to do. So I know the heater circuit is okay, and I've checked my earth, the sensor ground, and that is good. And the control wire coming back to it, yeah, doesn't seem to be doing what it's meant to be doing. It's meant to run at about 450 millivolts if the cat is doing what it's meant to do. But at the moment I've got no reading whatsoever. And as you can see, this has come down to virtually zero. It's not at its 450 millivolts, which it should be. Whereas this fella here is operating correctly, as you can see. This here should go 0.1 to 0.8, something along those lines. That's a nice signal right there. This back one, not so much. Even my short-term and long-term fuel trims are definitely within what they're meant to be. They should be no less than positive or negative 10, up around those lines. Short-term's doing its job. This one back here, it's got a little bit too much fuel in it, but just keep in mind I did dump a heap of fuel in there before, so that may take a little bit of time to clear out. It may come down further as I clear the fuel out. I've checked for exhaust leaks and found none, apart from the one that comes out the back where the hole is, but that's meant to be like that, I assume. Okay, so I thought, well, I should really start with basics. I know someone else has been in there before, a previous mechanic, and he's made some interesting decisions. So let's start with the real basics. He's serviced this, in theory, on a regular basis, I assume. So let's just start with checking the oil level. There's a basic one. don't know if you can see it, but can you see where the level is? It's huge, it's like about a litre. See where my thumb is? That's pretty much where it ends, I think. And it should be back where the dot is, which is about there somewhere, okay? So it's about a litre over full. So I'm going to drain that, not that it's going to help anything, but I thought I should do the right thing by the customer anyway, get it back to where it belongs. I don't know. Basic stuff, you think so? So I've drained an amount, hopefully that's the right amount. Let's just have a look at where the level is now. That's more of an acceptable level, it's round about there somewhere, just near the dot. So that's good, much better than being up here somewhere, isn't it? How much did I actually drain? Well, let's check it out. Let's just pour that in and see how much we've accumulated or drained out. Well, I drained out, wow, almost 2 litres. That's at least 1.75 litres, almost 2 litres. That's incredible, especially when you consider the entire engine only holds 3.7 litres. Man, that's incredible. Look at that, almost up to 2 litres. That only creates future problems if it's not maintained properly. Another indicator that something's not right here is the fact that the oxygen sensor, as you can see, even though it's at idle, is just lazily going up and down. But you can see the rear one is actually stuck on 0.8. Now, as I said, it should be about 450 millivolts or 0.45 of a volt. That's not what we're seeing. And I've had this running for quite some time like this, and you can see that it's staying where it is. Have a look and see what happens when I accelerate hard. Okay, so it's dropped back down. In actual fact, what should happen is they should sort of go up together, but we're not seeing that either. Now that it's down the bottom, I'm just going to nail it again and see what it does this time. Okay, perfect. Right, I'm just going to freeze that. Now, this shows that the catalytic converter is storing oxygen. You can see the front oxygen sensor, when I nailed it, it went rich, as you can see, but see there's a lag here. So you can see there's a difference between this point, and that's the oxygen saturation in the catalytic converter. I know that my cat's working okay, but this sensor is just all over the shop. It's not consistent. 1 minute it's reading 0 volts, next minute it's reading 0.8 of a volt. I'm not happy with it. I've got approval from the customer to get another one, so that's what I'm going to do, install it, and hopefully we've got it all sorted. It's a few days later and I've managed to score an original rear oxygen sensor for the little Yaris. So let's compare apples to apples, shall we? It came in a genuine Toyota box. The part number's correct. It's got extra plastic just to put into landfill. It has that little extra cap with anti-seize put on the thread. The old one has Toyota written on it. This particular one is an NTK part. The replacement one has Toyota written on it there. And this is a Denso part, which is used by original equipment. It's important to check the wiring and make sure that the wiring has been placed in the correct terminal location. These appear to be correct when compared to the old one. So I guess we stick it in, check the scan tool and make sure that we're getting the desired results. I've just started the engine and waited for it to go into closed loop. You can see this is closed loop up the top here, and the oxygen sensor in the bottom is starting to respond. Remember before when it went 0 and stayed at 0, or it went at 0.8 and stayed at 0.8. So as you can see, it's hovering around the 0.7. From extra research that I've done and others that I've spoken to, some of these will stay around about the 0.7 mark, which is pretty much where this is staying. Let's have a look and see what it does at 2000 RPM. So around about 2000 RPM, it's staying at that point there. Let's blip it and see what it does. Quickly responding there, nice. And of course it drops away as soon as we return, and it should come back up to roughly our 0.7 mark there shortly. Let's just bring the revs up again. And look at that, 0.7 again, nice. We can see we've got our oscillation here and a consistent line across here, sorted. I've just been on a road test and frozen this image just to show you guys what a good catalytic converter would look like. You can see the front oxygen sensor was oscillating when I nailed it. Oxygen was stored in the catalytic converter during this time period, and then the rear oxygen sensor noticed that all the oxygen had disappeared, so it registered that before it started to oscillate, or this front one started to oscillate again. I must admit this front oxygen sensor is a little bit slow and gives some dodgy readings occasionally, but I'll let the customer decide on that. But for the moment, yep, happy with the cat being replaced and also that oxygen sensor, the rear oxygen sensor, responding in kind. So it's about a week later and the vehicle's back in the workshop. Now I did tell the customer that possibly the front oxygen sensor might play up as well. When I took it for a road test, it was perfect for a while, then it sort of just, I don't know, I wasn't happy with it. Anyway, I've notified the customer of that and she's brought it back saying that it was better, but she had to drive it about 30 k's before the thing actually started to play up. So I'll show you what I did to try and isolate the fault and the results that I've found. After my road test, I wanted to leave the vehicle running so that I didn't lose any data off my scan tool, but just to prove that the fuel system was okay, I've actually got a fuel gauge and strapped it or cable tied it to the wiper arm on the other side of the windscreen, as you can see, and I've got the hoses stuck through the bonnet. Now this is the reading that I was getting off it constantly. It's about 320 kPa, which is excellent, and that was extremely consistent. It didn't drop, it didn't hesitate, so I'm pleased that the fuel system is okay. However, the data on the scan tool tells the story. I took it for a really long road test and I wanted to make sure that the data was consistent, and yes it was. You can see here that the oxygen sensor, the front oxygen sensor, has started to flatline, whereas before when I road tested it, it went up and down as per normal, as it should, and the back one stayed flat, as it should. If we have a look at our long-term and short-term values, I'm not exactly sure which is which, but you can see the minimum is -20, maximum is 19.5. The other one, this is most likely short-term, 2.3, but all the way down to -20.3. So this is probably responding due to the results from this front oxygen sensor. She's pretty damn dodgy. I'm not happy with that, so I'm going to advise the customer that she definitely needs a front oxygen sensor. I did think that the front oxygen sensor was faulty, but I didn't have the data at the time. So now that I have clear data in front of me, I can tell the customer, hey, front oxygen sensor definitely needs replacement. I'm still getting used to the G-Scan 3, but there's so many good features in it. I did a record of all the data and I can actually just scoot through it as I like. Now as you can see, this oxygen sensor, the front oxygen sensor, is doing some really dodgy stuff, hey? So originally it had that nice sine wave going up and down, and it starts to get really choppy through here. And just have a look how it responds up the top here, -20, which is pretty dodgy. And then when we get across here, see if I can scoot across, the parameters change up there quite distinctly, and you can see it flatlines up here, then it chops and changes and does all sorts of weird stuff. So -20 is our air fuel ratio up the top here, -20 is our long term, so our short term is pegged out and the long term is now reset at -20 because this stupid oxygen sensor is just doing some dodgy stuff. So yeah, absolutely, front oxygen sensor, not happy Jan. This air fuel ratio is simply in response to what this oxygen sensor is doing. You can see it's starting to come back down again, and that's simply because I pulled over the side of the road so that I could film this without creating a problemo. And this is where I had a loss of power as well. It'd be reading rich, of course. See the short term coming down there at the end when I pulled over the side of the road, and that's as a result of this front oxygen sensor starting to come down again. So yep, I'll stick another oxygen sensor in it, front one that is. I've just installed the new oxygen sensor, just waiting for it to warm up. Now we're starting to see a better oscillation on the oxygen sensor. We've just got to wait for this fellow to warm up. There it goes, it's just kicked in there, see that? Should go up to about 0.8. Pulse width modulated signal to the heater. It's going off and on, just to try and heat that heater up in the rear oxygen sensor. Just pulled over the side of the road to show you some of the recording that I've done. You can see that I've nailed it here, so it's going rich. Let's just see if we can scoot across a little bit. We get our oscillations back when I back off, and our fuel trims appear to be okay. I can't see any issues with those. Now I've gone about 10 kilometres so far, and it appears to be okay. I'm not counting all my chickens until I get back to the workshop, and I've done about 20 odd Ks. I want a little bit of heat soak here now, just to allow it to get worse if it's going to. But so far, from what I'm seeing, all these figures appear to be okay. My only concern is the air mass meter. It gets down to 1.3, which is what it should be for this, but not as often as I would like to see. So it may have a dirty air mass meter as well, which obviously starts at the beginning, the intake, and then goes through to the exhaust and creates all sorts of issues. Just recorded a fraction more. As I headed back to the workshop, you can see this nice consistent oscillation here. I've got a fairly consistent RPM. My fuel trims are within cooee of one another. They're quite reasonable, and we should be about 0.7, 0.8, something along those lines on our rear oxygen sensor. So that's fairly good. No major catastrophe there, but I'll continue to road test because, hey, don't want to give it back to the customer and it's not exactly 100% right. I want it spot on. I'm back from approximately about a 35 kilometre road test. Now I wanted to make sure that it was 100% correct before I handed it back to the customer. I've cleared out the fault code. I'm happy with the data presented. I'm getting this nice continuous oscillation from the front oxygen sensor, and the back oxygen sensor is pretty much a consistent 0.7, 0.8 of a volt. So I'm really happy with those results. The fuel trims look great as well, and there's no loss of power. Well, it is a Toyota Yaris 1.3 litre, but in view of that, it still has the appropriate amount of power. So this one's been a bit of a ride, of course. We've had exhaust systems go all over the country. We've had incorrect parts. We've had a faulty rear oxygen sensor. Of course, the catalytic converters were had it. And finally, a front oxygen sensor. The MAF sensor, or the mass airflow sensor, may be a little bit dirty as well. Some of the readings aren't 100% consistent or accurate, but for now I'm going to leave it and let the customer know. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video today, guys. It was a bit of a diagnostic challenge, but we got there in the end. Hey, if you did enjoy this video and you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, feel free to comment down below. Oi, don't forget about that notification bell. You don't want to miss any future videos, do you? Nah, of course not. Hey, this is MiracleMAX. I'm just about to sign off, so I'll catch you later.